All right. It's time for another Measure Master live training. I hope everything is working because we are on a new software here. But I want to welcome you if you are watching us wherever you are watching us from. It's great to have you join us. We are conducting here a Measure Master live training. So that's for our Measure Masters group. But there might be some people online as well. I want to watch this along. We have it also posted on the YouTube channel. So you are in for a treat here, because I have a special guest, Phil Pearce, on here. I first want to look into the chat. Can everybody hear me and see me? That would be the first thing I want to know. That would be great. We already have some people here. So Michael is here from Minnesota. We have Milena here as well. And Sina from Iran. Great to have you. And everybody can hear me. So without further ado, then, I already have the guest online, and it is Phil Pearce from Accelerate Agency. Now, before I get him on, yes, everybody good. Evan from Utah is here as well. So let's show Evan here. And Richard is here as well. So great that you are all joining us. And I don't want to keep you too long waiting, because the show is not about me. It's about our guest today, which is Phil Pearce. I have actually been following Phil for a while, because when I started out in analytics, there were not many people around. And Phil was definitely one of the more active ones on the forums at that stage. And yeah, let me get him on and introduce him to you. So welcome, Phil Pearce.
Hi, Julian. It's good to be here.
Yeah, thank you for joining us today, Phil. So I already told people I basically followed you for a long time, especially back in the days when Google Tag Manager first came out. You were one of the more active ones on the Google Plus group, rest in peace, where we were discussing all the new bits of Google Tag Manager, which was quite new back then. And we got to meet live at Measure Camp a few years back, and that is always a pleasure there. And I actually, Phil, I don't know if you know this, I actually
still yes.
Yes. From back in the day. It's even with color. And I just looked through it, and it's really funny because the screenshots and everything changed about Google Tag Manager. So Phil actually wrote a book about Google Tag Manager back in the day. I don't think it's too up to date anymore, but Yeah, definitely one of the old OGs of Google Tag Manager. So welcome to the show, and we're really glad to have you.
Yeah, Julian, I don't know if you know, I originally was active in the Google product forums first.
Wow.
And I was a top contributor in there for about 5 years. So it's where they used to invite top contributors like over to San Fran like every 2 years or so. And then
they did this first with like PPC guys, right?
Yeah, PPC was every year, and then the other forums were every like 2 years. And then obviously shifted over to Google Plus, and then Google Plus kind of disappeared.
Yeah, unfortunately. But yeah, we have so much more stuff around us here. But I still remember there was like when I first went into this Facebook this Google Plus group, and I looked through like, oh, what did others come up with, what tricks? And there was Simo there, and then there was this guy Phil Pearce, and like, oh, he's a good guy to follow. And you definitely always have like the little tricks in there. And yeah, now you started your own agency, right?
Yeah, so I've been running Accelerate for the last 3.5 years. So we're an analytics specialist agency doing lots of large GTM and Google Analytics deployments with some of the biggest brands in the world. So I did the Nat Geo deployment, which was a crazy one, and there's a number of other kind of big brands that we've kind of worked with. Actually, I've got a case study coming up soon, actually, which is like one brand that has 1,200 websites internationally, and explaining how I've kind of dealt with like rolling out GTM and Google Analytics on these huge sites, because there's quite a lot of learnings from those.
Wow. Yeah, it's super interesting once you when we first all were freelancers, and now some people have stepped up. I definitely haven't that much, but I'm looking forward, because your presentation today is going to be about your top tips learned in 20 years of analytics. So you have been in analytics for 20 years. That's then 2000. I don't know, like 2001, you started out, or what was the beginnings like? Because back then I wasn't really in analytics at all.
I actually started out doing database marketing, so doing kind of Word, kind of mail merges, and kind of sending out email spam. But a long time ago, I then moved from there into paid search for like a company similar to Magento. But my passion was always on the analytics side, on that kind of mathematical, technical piece. So it's only after that I then worked client side for a bit for creditcards.com, and then sort of shifted over into doing consulting and lots of GTM and Google Analytics sort of setups and deployments. And that's the stuff that I find interesting, and quite. It's kind of like problem solving. Like, how can I do this thing or solve it quicker, faster, better? I found that interesting and kind of stuck at it for, gosh, a long period of time. I think getting a few kind of grey hairs in my beard now, sort of thing.
Actually, I got a comment on YouTube once saying that, hey, Julian, I started watching you when you still had black hair. So I'm like, let's go there as well. Okay. I would say we shouldn't get going with this. I'm really thankful that you came over and show us your tricks, your tips today. And guys, if you stick around, you will actually be able to ask some questions later on. So just put them into the chat, and we'll be able to go through them at the end here. Phil's gonna for about 30 minutes. Around that time, we'll be going through this presentation, and then we will be able to have hopefully some good questions together that he can then answer. So yeah, Phil, why don't you take it away? Let me just.
I'm just gonna, hopefully you can see my screen. So I have one small request. So this particular presentation, it has a resource pack with it. So it's this bit.ly link down here. So it's bit.ly/Phils-resources. if Julian could maybe put that in the chat, or I'll just give you a few sort of moments to just download that. It contains a bunch of sort of resources and solutions that are mentioned within the rest of these slides. This particular set of slides, so having done lots and lots of Unlytics and GTM setups and implementations, this was my my top kind of pick from all of those setups and learnings. So, oops, just the next slide. That resource pack, when you download it, you should get about over 10 kind of things within there. It is like a sort of zipped file, and I'll go through those in order. But yeah, it may, when you open that, it'll go to a Dropbox link. So if you just press download in the top right of Dropbox, just so you sort of start that download and are able to access those files. You should also be able to get access to the slides, so we can either put them in the chat or email them through afterwards. So just press the download in the top right of that resource kind of pack link. So I've been doing this sort of stuff for 20 years, as Julian mentioned. I'm based in Bristol, which is just south or across from London in England. And this set of slides was literally, what one thing do I know now that I wish I knew then, from having done lots and lots of Unlytics setups and implementations. It's kind of a look back in time. And the reason behind that is, as someone that's relatively experienced in this kind of industry, it's quite useful to sort of learn from mistakes. In this case, my mistakes. So I'm sort of telling you some of these sort of things or key learnings, so that you can either avoid those mistakes or pick some really useful kind of wins that help you on projects that you're delivering. That list of my kind of top 10 kind of picks over those 20 years includes this list, and I'm going to go through these in more detail now. For time purposes, I'm probably going to maybe skip some of the middle ones, just so we can get it done in 30 minutes. But you'll get access to the full slides, so you can see kind of everything. We're going to start with the first one, which is the top 10 Google Analytics reports. So that's about the fourth one down in that resource pack. So it says top 10 GA tips resource. And I'm just going to turn on the pointer so you can see that. So the one thing I'd ask you to do, so in order to utilize this specific tip, if you open up Google Analytics, and I need you to find your Google Analytics account ID. So that's not your UA ID. It's the ID in the URLs itself. This is kind of the bit that, as you're traversing the Google Analytics interface, you'll see this 32-character string. If you grab that string when you're logged in, you're going to need it in a moment. And just to repeat, it's not the UA number. So the thing that you may not have noticed about Google Analytics is there's the ability to jump to specific reports, because the interface kind of builds those reports or queries using a very long URL. So what is possible to do is it's possible to jump to a pre-built report by just changing that account ID and the date ranges. So that's really handy, because I can sort of pre-program or preset a bunch of reports to go and visit, and it allows you to jump straight to those reports. So in this case, this is the landing page report or a channels report. So that means that if I give you a list of 10 bookmarks, then you're able to jump to those 10 bookmarks using Notepad, and you'll have kind of 10 pre-configured kind of answers to 10 sort of questions. So if you download that Notepad file and open it up, what you're going to need now is you're going to need to replace one of the elements within that Notepad file. You can download it directly by just going to that J-report-list2, or it is on the resource pack. When you open that Notepad file, you'll see the word where it says replace me in there. That's in capitals. So you need to replace that word with your Google Analytics reporting ID. That's that long 32-character one. And then to test it, if you then open up one of the links in that text file, for instance, the first one in that list, it will take you to one of those reports. In this case, this is report number 1. This is the best and worst landing pages. This utilizes a feature in Google Analytics which very few people are aware of, which is the weighted bounce rate report. Weighted bounce rate allows you to see the best and worst landing pages sorted via volume. So in this case, this is from a demo site called Computer Aid, where they had a Spanish form page here, which was not really performing particularly well on bounce rate. It's actually 90% bounce rate there with a high volume of traffic. But you'll notice that there's another one down there which is actually 90% bounce rate, but it's at the bottom. So you can see how it's accounting for volume and best or worst. So this is a very useful method for identifying those best or worst pages looking at volume. In this case here, the reason why that Spanish landing page was underperforming so much was Computer Aid was sending sort of English traffic to a Spanish landing page. And that's why it kind of bubbled up in that report. What you can do on the button there, if you saw ascendingly and descendingly, it allows you to see the best or worst landing pages using this weighted bounce rate. So it's a very useful kind of quick method to get your a quick report of what's working really well and what can be greatly improved. My second favorite report in that list is pages by revenue contribution. So this is using the goal field in Google Analytics and the value that is assigned to a goal. It's very helpful because if you've got multiple goals in an account and you have, let's say, 2 values to each goal, it allows you to see the combination of both of those things in one metric. In this case, with Computer Aid, they had a thank you page which was worth £100 to them, and people were visiting other pages as well as that thank you page. So you can see that the form pages here are all contributing to that conversion value or goal value. So these are doing really well. However, that one at the bottom called donation form is actually underperforming relative to those other pages. So that one possibly needs a bit of work. Sometimes you'll also see like blog pages in here or pages that are not directly generating revenue or leads. So, but yeah, this is a very helpful method for identifying those best or worst pages for revenue contribution. And it feeds into like a CRO audit or an insight audit. So I've just given you the first 2 examples from that list. That's the best and worst landing pages by weighted bounce rate or best and worst by revenue contribution. My other kind of picks within that are internal site search, looking at abandonment rate or refinement rate on site search, broken pages, so that's looking at 404 pages, looking at whether they're and the source of those, and referral paths, so you can find any external broken links and fix those. And then the other one in that list is looking at new and returning users by traffic source. So it's a quick way of seeing which channels are discovery channels and which are sort of closing channels. And then also there's some for analyzing keyword performance from AdWords over time using comparisons. And then there's another one on there for a 3D motion chart. That 3D motion chart one uses Flash, so you might have to open that one in Firefox for it to actually work. And then my other favorites are conversion probability and transaction probability. Those are more newer metrics that Google have introduced, and those generally would show on an e-commerce site where they show the chance of someone converting between a number between 1 and 100. It's a very useful metric for analysis because it's kind of better than bounce rate, and it's a very good indication of traffic quality. And then those other ones in that list are intelligent alerts for what's changed or what's working well or not working well, automatically detected. And then the custom alerts for things like 404 pages or spikes in server error pages. So what you can do with that text file is you can take the list of all of those answers, or all of those 10 bookmarks, and then if you press the download button in Google Analytics, you download each of those 10 reports as a PDF. What you can then do is you can merge those 10 reports by literally just searching for a free PDF merge tool, and then bing bang wallop, you end up with an insight audit out of the box. So you can then take that to your manager and say, look, I've just built you an insight audit in less than 10 minutes. So it's a really, really helpful, quick way of providing insight and analysis that hopefully will benefit you. Oops, I'll just get over that one. My second tip is calculated goals. Now, you might be thinking, what's a calculated goal? I know there's calculated metrics, but I'm not sure what calculated goals are. Is Phil kind of making up metrics here? Well, let me explain the problem. So in Google Analytics, when you create a goal, it will add a goal in number 1, number 2, number 3, etc. But clients, when they're sort of building out accounts, they don't always sort of pick the right kind of goal number, or they might pick goal number 20 or goal number 15. So that means that when you're, let's say, working on a large international site, or you're trying to roll out dashboards across a large series of sites, it becomes very difficult to standardize that goal number, especially when that goal number might flow through to your Google Analytics dashboards, Data Studio, Google Sheets, BigQuery, etc. So in this case here, it's not always the case that goal number 1 is the main goal. It might be goal number 2, 3, 4, etc. And because they're not standardized, that really causes a bit of a headache. So calculated goals solve that problem. So in this case here, what I'm doing is I've created a calculated metric called total goals, and that's combining 2 goals together in this case. And then I'm then pointing to that within my dashboards and other kind of areas. And it's not just for that sum of goals. It could also be blended CPA, conversion rate, etc. And it also has an additional benefit that if you get a new macro goal that needs to be added, let's say the client turns on call tracking, then you can add that into the list, and it means that would then propagate to all of your other dashboards, etc. So it really saves a huge amount of time by using that method. Also, you can import, let's say, 20 shared dashboards as well, all pointing at that calculated goal. So it means if you're an agency, you could rapidly roll out a dashboard-based solution, and it's going to be the same across all clients using this method. So here's that example of a call goal being added on the end. So in addition to that calculated goal, there's some other very useful calculated metrics that I suggest maybe adding into your account, because you do get 5 calculated metrics to use in the free version of Analytics. One that's quite good for e-commerce is to look at revenue, removing tax and shipping from that. This is especially useful in Europe, where it's more common to include tax and shipping in the total revenue number, but for analysis purposes, it's actually more helpful to take it out of the equation. So using a calculated metric that allows you to do that, and it also means your return on ad spend reports can also be excluding tax and shipping. So in the resource pack, I've got a list of all of my favorite calculated metrics, so you can see what I've kind of picked. It is also possible to take out refunds using calculated metrics, although one caveat about that is the Google Analytics method of reporting refunds is based off the date of the refund, which is not necessarily the same date as when the transaction happened. So it's possibly not as useful as it could be, but it's still possible to use it as an equation. So if you want to see that working in practice, if you create 2 calculated metrics in your account, this one here is called total goals, and then one called goals conversion rate, and then open up these 2 links down here. If you're using, if you're on e-commerce, pick the second link. If you're lead gen, pick the first link. And what will happen there is those 2 links will open or import 20 dashboards into your Google Analytics account, and they will point at these 2 calculated metrics sort of fields. So that's basically, that method allows you to see exactly what I mean, in the sense that adding 20 reports instantly, and then allowing you to easily edit those macro sort of conversion points. If you try and import these two links without creating the calculated metrics first, you will get an error on the import. It'll say like, I don't know where these are, or they don't exist. So you have to create them first here, then open up those two links. But that's really good, because instantly you're going to have 20 new dashboards in your Google Analytics account. So again, you can go to your boss and say, look, I've just created 20 dashboards for you in 5 minutes. How cool is that? It would be nice if Google Analytics had the option of automatically sharing 20 dashboards, which annoyingly they don't. You have to go into each dashboard individually and press the little kind of share button. But those two links there do allow you to instantly import those 20 dashboards straight away. Here's what they look like once you import them. So this includes like real-time reports for geographic, social, top content, SEO, drill down or dashboard, site speed, channel report, and some other ones in there. Some quite helpful and useful ones in that list. So my other tip is using GTM templates. GTM out of the box is completely empty. It doesn't have anything turned on for you, which is really annoying. But rather than kind of paint from a blank canvas, you can actually pre-paint that canvas, or have a part of it colored in for you. So examples of templates would be things like scroll tracking, form tracking, YouTube tracking, or JavaScript error tracking. All of these things that you can turn on in bulk by just importing a series of pre-configured templates. So just to be clear, now this is not the user-generated templates that Google have introduced. This is the sort of native templates. Rather annoying, they call both of them potentially templates, so there's a slight bit of confusion there. So this is the native part, not the custom sort of templates. So in that resource pack, you'll find one that's called GTM templates, and what it contains is a list of these text files that you can import into your Google Tag Manager account. So that first one in that list contains auto events. So on that previous slide, you saw it had scroll tracking, heartbeat, PDF download, etc. So that first one has all of those 12 auto event features that GTM supports. You can import in literally 2 clicks by selecting that file, importing it into GTM, and it'll then be pre-configured. If you just need pieces of that, let's say you just need the scroll tracking bit and YouTube, you can import that second one. If it's an AMP website, I've just pre-configured some of the fields for AMP that you'll need. And then if it's iOS on Firebase or Android, I've also pre-configured those bits. So greatly speeds up implementation time when you're working for one of these templates rather than a blank canvas. But there's also in that list, there's some other sort of CMS templates. I'm a huge fan of Anna Wave's Magento plugin. It's really cool. It's not free, but it's about £100, or that's about $120 per year. That's the mapping file for their template. It does enhanced e-commerce kind of out of the box, and does a bunch of other stuff. Super, super cool, and really useful for analysis. So I recommend that one. And also on WordPress, so Tommy Duracell's GTM for WordPress plugin is super cool, and that's my mapping file for that. So if you install his plugin and then import that configuration, it will mean that everything will work sort of perfectly. These are ones I've built up over the years, so working on Drupal, Angular, Bootstrap, etc. They're templates I use to track those ones. And then the others, Yandex, and some SEO ones in there for JSON LD, a GDPR template for a cookie consent that I've put in that list, and then some other ones for a thing called microfunnels for lead gen websites. So you can potentially import and merge some of these, so you kind of you can add this extra functionality into your existing, what you're currently doing. Now, we're sort of leveling up on this list, that the next ones are slightly more advanced and more custom. So this one here in that resource pack, there's one for an affiliate website, which is relatively advanced, but allows you to kind of map a thing called a UTM ID or an affiliate ID into Google Analytics. So it's a slightly bespoke requirement, but if you are an affiliate site, that's a very, very helpful thing to do, because affiliates often put their affiliate tracking ID, but they don't always tag it with a UTM tag. So it kind of allows you to map those two things together. There's one for a university website in that list, insurance site, cashback site, banking site, publishing site, etc. So hopefully one of those templates will be useful to the area or business that you work on. So feel free to download those and have a play with them. So again, the great thing about those templates is that you're going to be benefiting from the experience that I've learned of building these up over the years. So and it's going to save you a huge amount of time with your implementations. Also, in terms of methodology, the way that I would approach setting up a GTM account would be to start with those simple templates, so the auto event ones and the generic ones, then do your kind of Wistia or maybe sort of Facebook or sort of SoundCloud, etc. Then your CMS templates, your Magento, WordPress, Drupal, then your custom ones. So that's roughly the order I'd suggest kind of sort of doing them in. And the aim of that is because those custom ones take quite a bit of time to do, you're basically covering off the simple and fast ones first, and then you'll kind of jump into the more complex ones. So you're basically covering like maximum benefit for the client in terms of implementation time and delivering values straight away. So that's how that looks in practice. So the auto events here, then WordPress and Magento there, then those tech stack ones, and then the custom ones. You can also access, rather than just downloading those the files in the resource pack, there's also a shared login here, so you can see them in practice. Just one note, turns out if you get like 100 people all logging into a Google account, Google gets a bit funny about it, so you may find that password or login doesn't work, but by all means try it. If it doesn't, don't worry too much, because you can just download the zip file of the equivalent. And just a slight word of warning, so those advanced templates in that list, there's some fairly complex stuff kind of going on within there. So but that's a good thing, because you can sort of see how I sort of set things up, having been doing this for quite a long time. And that free cookie template one, or GDPR template, is in that list as well. So my fourth tip is using Screaming Frog as a dataLayer crawler. So Screaming Frog is free to crawl about 100 pages, and again, it's about £100 for a year to buy it. One feature it has, although it's designed for SEO, it's really, really helpful for analytics to do kind of quick validation and checking, because in the settings of it on here, you can see it has a custom search setting where you can say, go and find pages on the website that are, let's say, missing GTM code, or they've got that GA code or Analytics or JavaScript code. So it quickly gives you a list of URLs where you need to either upgrade Google Analytics to GTM, or you need to, let's say, move the Facebook code into GTM. So it's super fast to run, really, really helpful, and a lot cheaper than some of the sort of paid sort of tracking and validation sort of solutions. You can also sort of configure this to sort of scan dataLayer sort of values from a page. In the resource pack, there's the ability to import a pre-configured Screaming Frog configuration. Because under Screaming Frog, you go File and Import, then you can look at that, and that will show you some of the custom search elements that I've configured, not just the ones here, but also for dataLayer values and a few other different things. Yeah, it just saves you time and money. It means you don't need to pay for like an observe point or similar to that. You can just basically use Screaming Frog instead for a lot cheaper. Given the example of reading those onload or those dataLayer values, you can see here where I'm just using a regular expression to pull out the data layer that's loaded at the top of the page, or a data layer push function, or if there's any SEO markup, I'm also sort of pulling that out. Or if it's got YouTube on the page. So that's quite helpful for, again, validating to see if a data layer has got missed on a particular page. And here's the import for that Screaming Frog configuration and the link to sort of download it. Literally file, configuration, and load, and that will pre-configure that for you. So again, trying to save you as much time as possible here. So that's going to save you with manually configuring Screaming Frog, because it's all going to pre-configure it for you. So this is another one. So this is a kind of a bit of a hidden feature in Google Analytics that is sort of a bit like an Easter egg. This particular one kind of came about because a VC kind of asked me, how can I run a report on my on this particular client, because I want to know how much of this client's traffic is owned traffic or free traffic, earned traffic, for instance, from social, and then paid traffic. What they were trying to establish is how much is it like bumped up by paid, or what would happen if paid was turned off. They were trying to establish how valuable is this domain and the traffic that it accrues. Now, in Google Analytics out of the box, it doesn't actually give you this top-level report of paid, owned, earned, but it is possible and very easy to actually set this master top-level report. I'll just show you how you can do that. So in here, there's a feature called private channel groupings, and you can open that link kind of on that screen, and that will let you import that private channel grouping. That's going to give you those 3 kind of rolled up reports. And super value for a high level view of what's going on. The private channel groupings also allows you to run it historically, so you can do a look back in time. It's one of the few areas in Google Analytics which allows that historic kind of changes. You can also, if you so wish, configure the default channel grouping, so you can add another default channel grouping in here called paid, owned, earned as well in here. So that then gives you the additional benefit that it's exposed within the Google Analytics API. So you can run that paid, owned, earned report via the GA API. Annoyingly, private channel groupings are not exposed in the Google Analytics API. So that should give you a very useful view in terms of analysis that you previously didn't have, and a very high level view at that. So my other kind of tip learned through the years is clients is to use a 3-tiered upside down waterfall. You're probably thinking, what on earth is a 3-tiered upside down waterfall? Well, let me explain. So a standard waterfall in implementations normally starts like this. So you work out the business requirements first. You do, let's say, a KPI workshop. You work out what needs to be tracked and what's the business objective behind tracking it. You provide examples of that, of what tracking and dashboards are going to look like. You choose a solution, let's say GTM in this case. You go about implementing it, a bit of QA testing, and then you get to completion, and that then feeds over into so training, PPC, analysis, optimization, SEO, A/B testing, etc. That's great. The problem with the waterfall method, is that if it gets stuck, let's say here in development, then it causes a huge logjam, and you don't ever then get to the point of delivering the solutions down here at the end. So that's a big issue, because you want to sort of be able to deliver solutions to the client as quickly as possible. So what my recommendation here is to also run a parallel waterfall. In this case, setting up Google Analytics, setting up GTM, setting up Data Studio, and also Google Optimize, because all of these things can be done without sort of development resource. So it allows you to kind of deliver value and continue to keep things running. But you can also run an additional 3rd waterfall, in the sense that configuring Google Search Console, fixing link disallows or disavow even of our CSV upload, and sort of improving that kind of SEO sort of power and doing sort of content optimization on there. So again, link disavows and configuring Search Console doesn't require development resource or involvement. So it allows you to deliver value without sort of hitting a waterfall or logjam. So this is, from my experience, I found this a better route rather than an agile approach, because you get the benefit of things still kind of moving along, be it on different waterfalls. You're probably asking why I called it an upside down waterfall. Well, like with everything, clients like to see charts going up to the right, so so that's why it's called that. So that's the end of this specific set of slides. I'm really curious to know what you thought was your favorite tip from that list. Was it the top 10 Google Analytics reports, the calculated goals, or the Screaming Frog automatic configuration, or paid owned earned, or the upside down waterfall? By all means, put your favorite in the list. Or in chat, or add your own to that list. There's also a link in here which is to what other people picked as their favorite when I did a survey on this previously. So that's in terms of time, I think we're on so we've done about sort of 30 minutes. So I've got sort of some more tips I can go into for some bonus ones. I'll just sort of add them in here if that's helpful. And you,
okay. Go ahead.
Okay. So this one here. This one is, if you completed a large implementation for a client, it's really, really important that you prove to the client that you've delivered value and you've been like really working on it endlessly. So a great way of doing that is to actually show to the client, look, here's the number of changes that I've made for you in Google Analytics or GTM. So the great thing is there's a sort of change log in GTM and in Google Analytics, so it's possible to do that. So here, for instance, is a summary of changes that we made to a client's account. This is in Google Analytics. So these were changes to the views, to the goals, the filters, channels, and then the settings. And then whether these were creating of these views or properties, which takes a little bit longer, updating or linking them, or changing them, etc. So that's a quick summary of, that's a lot of kind of views that have been changed or updated or created. So that's good. And then those changes over time. This one here, it had lots of GA setup changes initially, and then some refinements when dashboards were added. And then this was GTM changes. So here, this was a template setup. So again, a huge number of versions that were created initially, then they were refined, then they're refactored, and then they were sort of deployed or rolled out to some other European and US kind of containers. So the summary of that, those are the GA changes there. These are GTM changes. So you can, I may be able to share the template of these to generate some of those, but in essence, you can download that version history and use it to summarize those list of GTM and Google changes to basically prove that you're delivering value to a client. And also this one here is meeting durations and frequency, and also looking at outbound emails compared to emails replied to. In this case here, the client is in red at the bottom, and then I'm in blue at the top. So they're roughly aligned. So that means that I'm answering questions in roughly about the same sort of time period, or relatively quickly. And in this case down here, I'm actually probably maybe doing too good a job, because I'm kind of asking the client to kind of for replies down here. So that's a way of proving that support is being generated or provided in a very fast and efficient fashion. I've got some other little tips. So the top 10 reports that I've mentioned were more generic ones. Also, for certain specific websites, there may be some tips that may be helpful. So there's two actually coming up here. One is from a finance site or insurance site, and the other is a banking website. This was from a insurance site in the UK. They found that they weren't able to open Google Sheets because it was sort of blocked on their network, but they needed to be able to run a Google Sheet that updated every Monday morning and sent them an email with the attachment provided. So it turns out you can do that in Google Sheets really easily. So this is using the Google Analytics plugin for Google Sheets and then a script running on top of it. So this is a relatively complex report, but literally just running that the GA plugin and then running this script to attach the sheet and send it in every Monday morning. It meant that the client literally just needed to forward that email every Monday. Previously they were manually generating it, so it saved them a huge amount of time, and all they needed to do on every Monday morning was just go and make a cup of tea and then forward the message. They didn't need to waste 2 hours every week so generating something, and it was done automatically. And the other one, this was a banking website. For them, security was a massive, very, very important thing. So they're using GTM, and there have been some problems or exposure issues with JavaScript-based tools in GTM. So you have to be slightly cautious or careful. In one case, there was a tool which affects a UK website called Ticketmaster. It was a chat script, and unfortunately that particular chat site got kind of hacked into, and it allowed, because that chat script was added on the Ticketmaster site, it was able to capture some password or login kind of details. So obviously this banking website needs to be super careful about that. So there's a very useful solution that you can do for banking websites on these login pages, where you basically say, if it's a login page, I'm going to sort of turn it into sort of safe mode on those login pages by turning off custom scripts. And it then means that if my access credentials are ever compromised, it's impossible to do anything nasty within GTM on that banking site on those login pages. So this one thing was super helpful for that banking site, and it gave the security team a lot more confidence and allowed the marketing team to kind of do a lot more things. Just one note about that: if you do use that method, you have to either use Facebook as a template script or run it as a custom image, because you'll get blocked obviously via custom HTML if you use that. So that's my kind of a list of tips and tricks. Hopefully you've learned something new and found something valuable from that list. So Julian, I'm going to open it up to questions now. Well, I can't hear you.
Yeah, I muted myself. So thank you very much, Phil. This was a great presentation. We have already so many people who found this really helpful. So just to pull up some chats here, Michael said, this is fantastic. So great stuff from Stephen as well. And the first question I actually had about your presentation, I mean, if other people have other questions right now, you have the expert right here, the GTM expert, but also the analytics expert with so much experience. So please just put it into the chat. No question is a dumb question or beneath us. So please do ask questions. And yeah, the first question that I actually had was, I just put it into the chat as well. It's like, Google Analytics dashboards versus Google Data Studio dashboards. So you talked a lot about like importing your Google Data Studio dashboards. Do you would you still recommend this now that GDS is out, or do you usually use Google Data Studio? What is your experience with Google Data Studio?
I actually do both. Because it's so easy to import those 20 dashboards, it's sometimes useful to validate the data in Data Studio as well. So what I didn't mention on there, I do have 5 generic Data Studio dashboards that I normally add on all implementations as well. But the other things like in that list of 20, there's also 5 real-time dashboards. And at the moment, you can't get real time in Data Studio. So there's those 5 don't currently exist there. And also there's another thing which is quite helpful, is those Google Analytics dashboards that you can click to link through to certain areas. So you can kind of almost do like a stacked dashboard linking to sub dashboards and then linking directly to the actual data. So yeah, I get what you're saying in terms of Data Studio, that but there are still benefits in using the Google Analytics dashboards.
Yeah, interesting. That's always like the experience that you only get when you actually work with clients on a day-to-day basis. Some information is just faster to get. And yeah, I'm interested to see if they are, well, they're kind of phasing out dashboards. I mean, Google Analytics 4 is there, and there's this other tool. But it's interesting to hear that this is still useful there as well. Cool. Let me see. We also had your question of like, what was your favorite favorite stuff here? We had Michael say, "So awesome, thanks." Kind of like drinking from a fire hose. So that's good to hear. Raphael really liked the calculated goals and the POA for sure. Stephen liked the supercat. What was the supercat again?
So that was well. I've got to put cats on a presentation because I'm posting it online. So it was that particular one. It was the calculated goals is kind of a big thing. So that's why that cat went from like small to big.
All right.
Yeah, it's sort of something that people. It's one of those ones where like once you know about it, you're like, oh my god, that's such an obvious thing. Like, but if no one tells you, like you don't know. It's kind of like it's like the secret sort of thing.
Then we had Marie saying GTM templates and Screaming Frog. Screaming Frog. So can it actually read JavaScript, or does it just pass the page and whatever's in the HTML in the initial HTML? Do you know?
Yeah, so that's just doing a raw rendered HTML parsing. So that's not looking at any on-click or JavaScript execution. But the benefit there is it runs faster because it's doing that. There are some other tools that you can still get it to read kind of on-click events, as in that parsed data, as in if there's an inline element. For like legacy GA code in on-click, but yeah, it is a raw rendered HTML.
Okay, and then Nancy, Nanny said, "Thanks so much for the top 10 GA reports. I think I'll give this a try the weekend." So that's great. And let me see. The famous question here, Ricard says.
Julian, one thing about that top 10 tips one, if you're going to present that to your manager, don't tell them it took you 10 minutes to produce. Say, I was working over the whole weekend. This took me like a whole day to do, but slaved away at it for you. Here you go, boss.
That's where your reports at the end come in, where you do the analytics on your. You need to fake this a little bit, so like you have a bit more. So this is the famous question. What is your thoughts on GA4? So have you already tried it out, played with it? What are your thoughts?
Yes. Yes, I have, and I'm sort of keep finding things that are missing in GA4 compared to GA3 or Universal. One thing, so I'll just tell you that my gotchas on it that I've detected so far, or things to be aware of. When you're first creating GA4, there's a setup screen, and one of the questions on the setup screen it asks you is, do you want to run it in hybrid mode, or do you want it in GA4 mode? And whatever you do, don't change it to GA4 mode only, because if you do, then it won't ever let it change back to hybrid mode. And I had this come up recently on an account that which had got like 3 months worth of data, and they were connecting to a call tracking provider which only supported GA3, i.e. or GA4 in hybrid mode. And it's like, we can't now, it's not actually possible to connect up this call tracking solution to GA4 because it's like there's not a setting to turn back time and turn it onto hybrid mode. So that's one, like, just be really careful about that setting when you do create that GA4 account. Like, don't leave it on hybrid mode. The other thing I'd say, there are some features within it that are missing at the moment. There's no exclude parameters. The kind of, let's call them goal URLs or sort of fake or fake kind of events doesn't currently support regular expressions, which is rather annoying. And there's a few little bits that I've got sort of stuck on when compared to GA Universal. That said, they've rolled out fairly recently. They've introduced some new features in GA4. So predictive segments. So in GA3 or Universal, you've got smart remarketing lists. They've now just rolled out predictive remarketing lists, where they basically say, I think this audience is going to be worth money, as in looking at lifetime customer value and predictive lifetime customer value. So there are going to be some machine learning elements in there that can be really, really handy for AdWords remarketing lists that don't exist in GA3. So it's kind of like, at the moment, like run it in parallel mode, but there'll be a point where some of those really cool features are just super, super useful. Obviously, you've got the BigQuery integration, which is a key difference as well. So, but yeah, it's not really at a point where you can kind of switch over to GA4. There's still some pieces that need to be kind of plugged in first.
So did you actually? The question is, I was like, we know what GA4 is and how it works, but did you already tell your clients to, hey, we need to get this installed in order to get the first data in, or you're like, okay, let's give it a half a more year or a year more till it's complete, and then I will tell my clients so they will actually pay me for it, or do you do this for them? Like, I don't know. It's always like a question that I get.
Well, I've turned it on, as in the page view, and obviously turned on all of the auto events. And I've turned on these kind of fake conversions or URL-based conversions. But it's kind of, at the moment, I'm just comparing it to GA3, and it's not a primary solution currently. But there'll become a point where, yeah, it does become primary, but just at the moment it's not quite there. Unless you're obviously doing loads of stuff in app and you're using Firebase already, then it's just going to be natural to kind of switch to switch that. But yeah, it's getting there, but just not quite there yet.
Okay, then we have a question here from Career Fox. And in the context of being less experienced, well, everybody starts out there, Career Fox. What does Phil recommend for a freelance approach using these tools to prove value and win first clients? Mistakes to avoid. So, Phil, you were a freelancer before you started your agency. What was like when you would recommend somebody to get started with using the analytics skills to win clients? What are some really quick tips you could give them?
Yes, I mean, I found from my experience, kind of building up credibility on the forums, like becoming a top contributor, kind of standing out. I mean, I actually end up being answering the other top contributors' questions that they got stuck on. So it's kind of like leveling up and building up that credibility is so important. And also on places like Upwork and such, you can build up kind of review stars, which is a similar sort of thing. And that also means the more credible you are, the higher rate you can charge. And it also helps you with winning kind of business. I did, I'll see if I can post it in the chat. I did a set of tips about, if I ping that through to you, Julian, and
yes,
it's a link to some slides on career tips. Also, there's one I did for some students at Bath University, which Bosnan, where she looked at social capital and social value, and she looked at those examples of credibility on networks and sort of trust signals, and how you can kind of build up your personal brand. So there are ways of leveling that up, and basically kind of making yourself look bigger than you are, and learning quickly. So maybe ping me a message or email afterwards, and I can share some of those sort of solutions. But the templates I've mentioned within here also allow you to level up quickly, because you're going from a blank canvas to automatically kind of half built. The mistakes to avoid. So don't never go in too cheap. Obviously, you kind of want to, like, if there's a slight intake of breath, as in, oh god, that's expensive, then you know that, like, you're about right. You can always move downwards with price. You can never move upwards. And if you're going to negotiate, try and negotiate on features, not on price, I'd say, if possible. And other mistakes to avoid: never underestimate the importance of relationship with clients. So it's super important that you've got. I mean, the projects that have gone the best for me have been where there's like an in-house analyst or someone that's just super keen to learn, and they just really run with it. They like absorb everything that you tell them and just like really get it. in other places where it's been working with sometimes brand managers or someone that's been handed analytics and it's not really, they're not really as invested in it, or it's not like a GA360 sort of project, there's not a cost factor involved, then it doesn't always go quite smoothly. So if you can get them to sort of put skin in the game, or that helps make the project go a lot smoother and better. There's a slight difference between analytics and AdWords in the sense that you can't say, I'm going to improve your CPA or return on ad spend. It's hard to say like your data quality improvement from 5 to 10 is worth this amount of money. So that's a bit of a sort of industry problem. And I wish Google Analytics had a scoring sort of factor in there, because then you could factor that in with your fee. You say, look, we've moved you from a 5 to a 10, and that means your business decision making is now going to be a lot better, and it means you're going to be a better business and a more effective sort of business. So yeah, the only one other thing I'd say would be fail fast, but learn quickly. If you're gonna when I first started, I made loads of mistakes, like especially within GTM. And it's like one thing you learn is you never make the same mistake twice. It's like it really hurts, sort of thing. Yeah, like if you try and make mistakes in a sandbox environment and learn from mistakes of others. Yeah.
I think that GTM is so great because we can use the preview mode to try stuff out and see does this work? No, then let's try this thing, and then you have a little bit of a feedback cycle. But obviously, it can also work in another direction when you later publish something and the data doesn't quite come through, or you see mistakes later on. So that's really good to hear.
Obviously, Julian, if they take courses such as yours, then that also reduces the chance of mistakes being made.
Yeah. Thanks. So one thing here from Steven, I think it's really a cool question, because I know Accelerate Agency also does SEO. On the surface, G Search Console is minimal informative. Do you have a power user's favorite insight from Google Search Console? Is there anything that you would look at when you try to evaluate something inside of Google Search Console?
So I'm one of the 5 Data Studio templates I use is so I've taken Google's existing Data Studio template for Google Search Console, and then I've adapted it, and I've sort of pulled in things like there's a method of looking at changes from a 4-weekly period to another 4-weekly period, and kind of building to see if looking for key phrases that have got a high CTR but maybe a low position. There's a method that is actually on our blog. So if you go to the Accelerate Agency blog and search for SEO gap analysis, there's a Google Sheet on there that tells you how to pull the data out of Google Search Console and actually generate a gap analysis, which highlights phrases that have really an opportunity for improving, as in non-brand phrases. Again, on our site, in the navigation on our site in the top right, there's a free SEO audit tool that you can run that runs crawl data plus Google Search Console data, and I think I've got, maybe afterwards, if you ping me an email, I've got a bunch of SEO tools that I normally use that I can sort of share. So yeah, I think again, there's not. You used to have like PageRank for a link score. There's not like an on-site SEO score. The only thing that they do have nowadays is obviously Google's rolling out that the core call signals thing, the site speed thing, where they put stuff into buckets of either green, amber, or red. So, and if you're obviously in the red bucket, that's a bit of a problem. So those areas you need to fix. I think that rolls out next month, the Core Web Vitals update.
Yeah, I don't know if it's rolling. I'm not too deep into the SEO stuff, but it's good to hear. So thanks for this insight. We are already at time here. Do you have a few more minutes? We have a few more questions. Cool. Let's go with Michael's here, asking, do you have recommendations on segments or audiences in Google Analytics for e-commerce? Like, what are maybe the segments, the audiences that you look at most when you work with an e-commerce site?
I wouldn't say segments as such. I think that one of the things that's missing on is more about use of custom dimensions. So on e-commerce specifically, I always try and turn on a new and existing customer, as in a value, a user-based custom dimension, which obviously you can segment, because you might want to bid differently if it's a new customer versus an existing one. And actually, AdWords have a beta where you can actually pull that data into AdWords. Again, I'll send through Julian the script that's needed to get you on that beta or enable it. Those custom dimensions would flow through into segments. The other bit would be the long-term customer value as well. So the amount of revenue that you're earning from a user over a long period of time. That's quite good to segment, as in your high value users, medium value, low value. There's an expression which is sometimes like 10% of your audience makes like 90% of your revenue. So it's quite good to focus on those really high value users and get as many of them as you can and get them to spend as much as possible. So those are not strictly segments, but they're really using of custom dimensions that allow you to then segment. Trying the other ones that are sort of good. Yeah.
And then let's go with the last question here from Marie. And this is an interesting one. Obviously, what are your thoughts about phasing out the third-party cookies in Chrome and other browsers? How can we continue making sure that we have adequate tracking to achieve our KPIs?
I mean, third-party cookies is more of a problem for affiliates or for remarketing. Anlytics is first-party based, so that's still going to work, or at least it's going to be stored for a minimum of 7 days. So there are ways around that. So server-side tracking, as an example, or respawning cookies on like the 8th day with the same kind of user ID or session ID. It's not something with privacy changes. They don't normally happen like instantly. They normally happen over a long period of time. So you'll probably find the market gradually adapts. And at the moment, and the thing that's stopping the Safari rolling out those changes is that currently there's not a browser interface for like accept remarketing cookies or opt into remarketing cookies, and the same with analytics cookies. So because of the lack of that consent API, it's very difficult for Safari to enforce turn off cookies completely. So it needs that the browsers or WebKit to kind of follow in order to facilitate that, because even Apple realized that business still needed to function, and first-party sort of cookies are a requirement for businesses to be able to spend money effectively. It's like the famous phrase, 50% of my marketing works, I just don't know which 50%. Well, it's like, the reason tools like Google Analytics exist is in order to improve marketing efficiency. Some businesses wouldn't be able to function at all online only if there weren't tracking sort of tools or performance-based tools.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I see it in the same way. I mean, there are obviously like emerging technologies, and technologies will always change. But these cookies were around, and it made them very convenient. All these tools were made this very convenient. Now things are changing. They're changing maybe not as fast as like today you need to have this. And everybody is looking for very clear instructions. But in the end, we don't always have them just yet. So we need to see how it works out. Okay, Phil, thank you so much. People found it super valuable what you had to say here. So we had Maria also say thanks. Then Stephen, thanks for making this work as well. And Raul said awesome information here. So people got really value from this. And thank you so much for your time. Where can people find out more about you, what you are up to, and generally see the stuff that you put out?
So you can find me on Twitter on Phil D. Pearce, or on our website Accelerate Agency. Just one other sort of shout out. I'm looking for a very good implementation expert on Google Analytics and GTM. So and that could be either a contractor or someone that's willing to work remotely. So if you're kind of that person, then please reach out to me and say hello.
Yeah, absolutely. I think hopefully there will be somebody in the audience that hears the call here. Okay, thank you so much, Phil, again. And I'm just going to switch over to myself here for a second. Thank you for everybody who attended today. We are at time here. This was a Measure Master live training, so there will be no replay for this. But if you are a Measure Master, you will be able to find this in our library. And we do these live trainings every month on different topics with different experts. So if you want to join us over there, then head over to measureschool.com/measuremasters, and we'll be able to get you sorted out there, and you can have a look what we have in there, like courses and so on. For now, I hope that everybody got everything that they would need, and thank you so much for the time and attending and the questions and so on. And yeah, like always, my name is Julian. The next time.